Blog Talk Radio.
Well, good afternoon. Actually, it's good morning, everybody. This is Stephen McCarthy from the McCarthy Project. I just want to thank everybody right out the chute for listening. I am totally thrilled with what's happening here at the McCarthy Project. We have some really cool projects that we'll be announcing going forward to kind of add to what we're doing related to being out at some events this summer. So really looking forward to the summer if it actually does arrive, which it did. It's actually just to kind of give you an update on the Minnesota weather. It is in the forecast again for some more snow. So it does kind of make you smile after a while. But so on today's show, what we're going to do is we're going to look into a particular subject today, and it is going to be triathlon wetsuits. And instead of just talking about them in general, we're going to break them down from a couple different angles. One, we're going to talk about body types, if you're one of the extremes, because more times than not, wetsuits are made for a particular body type, which is more times than not about 6 foot, about 160, maybe a little, probably about 6 foot, thereabouts, and then everybody else outside of that, whether you are 6 foot 220 or you are 5'7", 180, or if on the other side, if you are a more of, well, we won't go there. We'll wait till those are. But basically, what it boils down to is that if you're on the extremes, you do need to take some time with this. And so we're going to attempt to break it down from a standpoint of what brands, how, what should you look for, because it really is not it's a science to some extent, but it's an art in the end. And so we'll be talking about primarily triathlon today. So again, I think the takeaway ultimately is that almost every brand in almost every sport tries to or attempts to create a product that is available for everybody. But what we have found, especially in something that's very tight-fitting, and we need to be a little bit more open-minded and realize that each model is a little bit different. And so we're going to be just looking at the different brands today specifically, and then also some special cases. And so we'll be looking forward to this. So with that, we're going to go to our first commercial break, and we'll be back with Mr. Swarthout. See how we'll find out how his weekend race went in the snow, and then we will go from there. So look forward to talking to you again right after the break. Five Star Basketball, the leader in basketball instruction and camps. Endorsed by Michael Jordan, Dick Vitale, and Hubie Brown, and where the teaching never stops. 5 Star Basketball Minnesota will be hosting a one-day instructional camp on May 18th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. and will be hosted by 5 Star, the McCarthy Project, and Grassroots Hoops. For more information on the camp, visit themccarthyproject.com/5-star. XL Athlete is the leading provider of online strength and conditioning and speed development camps. For more information on their training programs and speed development camps, visit xlathlete.com. Hi, I'm back. This is Stephen McCarthy. Kris Swarthout is joining us. We were just getting him on the phone here. I clicked him over to the green room just to chat with him a little bit offline. And once you know it, the program hung. So he is in limbo as we speak. So we're going to be talking a little bit about his race, as far as that's concerned. And then from there, we're going to be going off into the world of wetsuits and brand specific. All right, Kris, I think I have you all live and queued. So tell us about the race this weekend. Did snow make or break the event?
It didn't help. In fact, we got probably the largest snowstorm of the year so late in April. 2 days before our event was not a good thing, but the city of Minneapolis, thank goodness, are amazing with their ability to clear the roads, and we got helped with a sunny morning with no wind, so it went off very well. I was really, really happy with it, and it couldn't have been any better with the circumstances. So I was happy. Look forward to expanding on that Y run again this year and next year, and it is what it is, right?
Yes. Well, I think the name of the race is very appropriate. You'd have to find your Y to run in the snow, if it's cold. And you're a warm person like myself, you would definitely have to have a Y, versus, hey, this is just fun, man. I'm going to go out there and run in the snow for an hour,
Exactly. Well, the thing is, we were on the streets, so the streets were completely cleared and dry. Even had a couple wheelchairs out that were racing, which was always great when you see the wheelers come out. Had the kids race that went off really well. Mom and dad's with the strollers, and so with that whole thing, I think it was a great event. I mean, if I was having an early spring triathlon, I'd be worried right now. I know that a couple of events have already made plans in accordance with that. I know that the White Bear, or not the White Bear, but the Blaine Triathlon has actually canceled their swim already. I think their event is May 15th. So since we're planning to get did I hear right? Today in Minneapolis, we're supposed to get another 3 to 6 inches.
That is correct. My son filled me in this morning because he's getting his longboard today, and he was looking forward to going outside after school and up and down the sidewalk for 4 hours, and he found out that he would probably be snowed in.
Yeah, he should trade the longboard in for a snowboard.
He has tried that, but his rear can't handle the pain. It's when you're sitting on your duff more than you're snowboarding. It gets to be a little bit of a pain in the rear, literally. So
practice.
That may be so. Alrighty, so after saying so for the 15th millionth time, I can only imagine how many times I've said so. But to give a little update on our technology piece, we are, again, live on Ustream at the McCarthy Project. You can see my lovely face for a straight 2 hours. We are working on getting Kris on the show with us. That way we can have a little bit of interaction, and I think it'd be a lot funner for people that would like to watch somebody talk rather than just listen to the radio, which is totally cool. But I think there are some people like myself, I like to see people when they talk sometimes. So you can see us there.
Are you sure you really want to see me for 2 hours? Are you sure you really want to see me for 2 hours? Because that's. I mean, I don't know. I know people can tolerate hearing me talk, but having to see me, that might be a little bit too much.
Honestly, until you've actually sit and watched yourself for 2 hours while you're talking, you don't get to be concerned about that quite yet, because everybody's going to love you. Because if you can stare at yourself for 2 hours, somebody else will like you too.
Wasn't there a Greek god that something happened? What was it? Was it Narcissus or?
Yes, there probably
was a Greek god that used to stare at themselves in the water all the time.
Honestly, I'm telling you, it's the truth. You can sit there when we get the technology all set up. Literally, you're looking at yourself talk, And when somebody else is talking, you're just sitting there. And you better be paying attention, because if you're off going to the bathroom or not listening, you will be exposed.
Oh, yeah.
So, anyways, so with that, I know you're under the gun a little bit, but so we're going to challenge your depth of knowledge related to wetsuits today.
Ooh. I thought you were going to say basketball.
I know. Nope. Honestly, we did have a great weekend of basketball in Minnesota, though, because one of the biggest weekends for AAU basketball in Minnesota was this weekend. There was 2 major tournaments, and so I heard that Mr. Patino was out looking at some players, and I did not actually see him, but I have a friend of mine that made me aware that he was out and about this weekend.
Richard, not Rick.
What did I say?
No, you said Mr. Patino, and I was just defining Richard, not Rick, correct?
Well, that's really good. Yeah,
you never know. You got to define your Patinos nowadays, because it can't be assumed. I mean, even though he's our new coach, but.
Yes. All right, so I've set the table. So again, I think the best way to go about this is to kind of start with some general questions, and then as we move into the brands, specifically to talk about, body types. And again, I don't know if you had a chance, you were just a little bit late, but again, what we're attempting to do today is not to pigeonhole brands into certain positions. We more want to attempt to give an idea of the technology. What does it bring to the table? Is it needed or not needed? And then give some general structures of something that will work, because I think a lot of times in triathlon, there's the top dog in the neighborhood, and he's got his 6 buddies, and the top dog is a 6'4", 160 guy, and he says, well, this such and such a suit's the one I swear by. Well, the 5'7", 180 guy isn't going to fit in that same brand more times than not, because they're totally different body types. Now, the brands would like to think that they could fit everybody, but it's the nature of a tight-fitting object on numerous different body types. And so what are your thoughts related to that, and how do you want to kind of set the stage before we go into the brands?
Well, I think it always comes down to being able to try something on in a shop. And it's always about trying on different brands to see if the men's large in brand X fits differently from men's large in brand Y. So fit is number 1. Flexibility is number 2 with range of motion. It's no different than buying a bike, no different than buying a car or buying a pair of shoes. For the person that goes out and shops specifically on brand name only, based on reputation, I think that's a limited viewpoint, and I think that you get a limited scope of what your product will be that you'll end up consuming. So for the same reason why if somebody says, you need to run an ASICS because I run an ASICS and you always run an ASICS, but you've never found that maybe Nikes fit you better, maybe Pumas fit you better, whatever it might be, I think you're limiting yourself as a consumer. Same goes for wetsuits. For a wetsuit, you need to understand that there's differences in them. There's differences in quality, and a lot of times it's reflected in price. So if you see something that's too good to be true as far as price-wise goes, probably too good to be true. I've seen some very cheap wetsuits out there that are very inexpensive, but they're very poorly made. They don't hold up as long. They aren't as versatile. They aren't as comfortable. The range of motion is not the same. And you'll mainly find companies will be eager to tell you that their product is better for those specific reasons. So they'll throw out, in terms like Yokohama and, like 4 mil or extra stretch or, internal baffles. But essentially you want something that you can try on, that you can, if at all possible, try out to use. I know some of the best tri stores that I've ever been to have endless pools in them where you can actually try a wetsuit out to see if it fits and see how it works. But the thing is, you don't want it to be too big. It's going to be tight. People have to understand that going into it. I know a lot of first-timers say, wow, I'm really kind of freaked out because how tight this is. Well, it's going to be kind of like a girdle, and you got to make sure that it doesn't gap around specific areas because it will cause chafing, and it will also grab water as you go, which basically ends up to be like a big hood scoop, which is cool for, motor cars, but not cool for wetsuits.
Yes, there is a certain drag that comes along when you carry 6 pounds of water in your stomach or somewhere in your suit. So
yeah, it's not so much how much you have inside there, though. It's not so much how much you have inside. It's what you're actually grabbing. So you could fill you could fill yourself full of water, and that's not a problem. I know some people that do that to kind of help with cooling, but it's when the neck actually will start to gap and scoop water the entire time. That's when you get a slowing effect.
Because it's interesting that you say because in my understanding is that the triathlon wetsuit is actually made to not let water in, and essentially that seal, if you will, is what causes the buoyancy piece. Because the tighter the suit, the better the technology works. But it's interesting. You actually said exactly opposite. You actually you don't mind a little water in there.
Exactly. Well, it's what creates the buoyancy is the product. So the neoprene is what creates the buoyancy, straight up and down. The better fit you have, the better results you're going to have. Meaning the less you have dragging in the crotch, the more accurate the torso sizing is. So between the crotch and the neckline. So are your shoulders fitting? Is the stretch appropriate, or is it it's like fat guy in a little coat? Doesn't work. You can stretch it out. You're going to rip it out. It's going to go on hard. You're probably going to need a second person to help you get it on. But once you get it on, it should be tight, and that's for a reason. Now, for people that wear a full size wetsuit in the summertime on a hotter day, there's a couple things you can do. Now, a good friend of mine, Barb Lindquist, she was an Olympic triathlete and Olympic swimmer. Now she heads the USA Triathlon Collegiate National Recruitment Program. Barb had a hard time with heat management all of her professional career, and so what she would do is she would take a small sandwich bag of ice cubes, and put it on the inside of her wetsuit to help mitigate body temperature. Now, what that would do is that would help lower her core temperature without compromising fit or function. And that's an important thing that comes to be when you're trying to keep your core temperature low, but still want to have the advantages of having a full body wetsuit.
Yes. Now, this is the thing, and I think right out the chute, I think we've hit on something, is that if you don't take the time to research and understand what we're saying, what everybody else is saying to you, then you'll get yourself so whacked out, because if you would have just heard what Kris said, he said, well, you could put water inside this thing. I mean, those aren't the exact words, but essentially that's what you said. But now a little bit more information says that you're using it to manage. You're not essentially taking a big bucket and dumping it down your neck and then allowing the water to sit inside your suit for the simple fact of having water inside, because that's more like the scuba diving type suit.
Yeah, and for the same reason why people pee inside their wetsuits. It's all about management of temperature. So when it's a hot day and you're trying to, but the water is still wetsuit legal, you just kind of dip yourself down, open up your neck, have a little water go in, and it'll cool down your core temperature. Okay? Then what you'll do is if you're going to be, if you're cold and you need that little heat and you're okay with that, then you can pee inside your wetsuit, and that'll give you a little burst of heat that'll help kind of raise your body temperature for a minute.
Done. All right. So I'm going to just come back because I wrote down some of the things that, through my years of working with wetsuits are all the kind of the big ones. One is the torso length always is the big question, because, it basically pulls your shoulders down. Because if it's too short, if you're a longer torso person, you got the wrong suit on, and you're essentially going to be a hunchback because that torso length is wrong. And then the second one is, well, I'm feeling like I'm fighting the suit with my shoulders, essentially burning out your shoulders when you're swimming because the suit's not fit proper. So there's a lot of cool things I want to kind of go into that you mentioned. And then the other one is price. That $99 special, or whatever that is, $99, whatever that is, $100 special. is $100 special. It's not a great bargain that you're going to get the same technology, as the higher quality brands. All right. Anything else that you want to set the stage with? As far as before we go to break?
Nope. Not that I can think of at this point.
Cool. All right. So the big thing that we want to go down is, and just to kind of summarize, is, again, we're going to be going into brands. We do understand that brands do want to fit a majority of the athletes, and they feel that they do, but there are some differences that allow certain, extreme body types to fit into a little bit better than others. And remember that I think price does dictate quality in the world of wetsuits. If you're going to get the $100 special at retail and you would get a $100 Orca that's, it was $400, take the Orca in a heartbeat because the technology is there that could potentially help you. So with that, we're going to move over to a quick break. We'll come back and we'll be starting with Orca wetsuits right after the break. 5-Star Basketball, the leader in basketball instruction and camps. Endorsed by Michael Jordan, Dick Vitale, and Hubie Brown, and where the teaching never stops. 5-Star Basketball Minnesota will be hosting a one-day instructional camp on May 18th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. and will be hosted by 5-Star, the McCarthy Project, and Grassroots Hoops. For more information on the camp, visit themccarthyproject.com/5-star. XL Athlete is the leading provider of online strength and conditioning and speed development camps. For more information on their training programs and speed development camps, visit xlathlete.com. We are excited to offer the following products on the McCarthyStore.com. Innovate Running Shoes, the leader in barefoot and natural running technology. We carry the full line of sizes and colors. Berkey Water Filters, the leader in anti-gravity water filtration. For more information, visit themccarthyproject.com or go directly to the McCarthy Project store website. That's www.themccarthyprojectstore.com. Alrighty, I am Stephen McCarthy, your host of the McCarthy Project. I am with Kris Swarthout, our faithful co-host, also at the McCarthy Project. Isn't that fascinating? So with that, we're going to be just talking a little bit more. One of the things I thought about over the break that I want to make sure we hit as well is that the question we were posed numerous times was that, is the size chart accurate? And each brand has their own version of the size chart. And so the biggest part about the size chart accuracy is that every brand has a model that they choose, whether it be the traditional triathlete, whether it be the traditional American, or all that type of thing. Every size chart is accurate for their brand. What you have to realize is that your body composition and how it applies to that brand. Because I know that there's sometimes some retailers will say, well, just add 15 pounds to the wetsuit to the size chart. And I think that's a little bit of a too broad brush of a stroke at it. You have to really take into account who you are and how you apply. And so hopefully through this time spent that we'll be able to kind of assess and give you some information, some things to do when you do your research. Another thing, too, Kris mentioned, is to try on a wetsuit. I know that as a former triathlon shop owner, one of the hardest things that I had to do was make a decision on which suits to stock. And like we all like to think we're all triathletes in the world, there still is a very limited number of people that want to spend $300 on a piece of rubber and put it on their body. So it is something that there comes a point where maybe you can have 2-3 brands, and you may be looking for a brand that they don't have. Well, that's where the tricky part comes, and I know that everybody likes to be loyal to the local shop, but it really puts you guys in a quandary because you don't want to make the wrong decision. Just saying you're trying to be loyal is a tough decision. And I think if that shop doesn't have the wetsuit that you're looking for to at least try on, going on to another competitor and trying it on is well worth your time and in the long run. So with that, we're going to be talking about Orca wetsuits. So let's, as far as the kind of the format, what I'd like to do is make some general statements about the brand. Then we'll talk about some pros. Then we'll talk about some cons, and then kind of in conclusion, if we could go into a little bit of into the models a little bit, that would be great too. But I really like to kind of have it more like in a format where we just kind of hit the points, and then we move on to the next. Does that sound like a winner?
Yep.
Done. All right. So let's start off with Orca. What is your background with Orca? How do you view the brand in the marketplace? Let's put that question that way.
I'd say that the Orca brand is definitely one of the top tier brands that's available in the marketplace. They put out a good high quality product. They have innovative styling. They use state of the art technology. And if for anyone that's looking for a high end triathlon specific wetsuit, I think it's one of the brands that needs to be vetted out. There's a short list of brands that I always push out there. Is about 4 or 5 brands that I advise my athletes and other athletes to always choose or to choose from, and are the ones I've had the best history with. And so Orca is definitely one of those brands. And I know the owner, Mrs. Kirkland, and she's a wonderful person. I've met her. She's actually been to our studio here in Minneapolis, and her husband Tony and his company with Orbea Bicycles is a big sponsor of ours. So I'm a fan.
Gotcha. Because Orca is probably the brand with the longest history in triathlon, because they were probably one of the first.
Nope, I'm going to stop you there. They're not. Quintana Roo invented the triathlon specific wetsuit.
Okay, then fair enough. But they were around the beginning. Let's just put it that way.
Okay. I'll agree. I'll agree to that one. I'll agree to that one.
So they both came out, and I think the biggest thing that I have learned about Orca is that they are more of your traditional triathlon wetsuit. They started off, the model is the 6 foot 160, 170 guy. If you had a prototypical Orca athlete, do you think that that's an accurate statement, or would you say it's broader than that?
I would say 10 years ago, that would have been an accurate statement. I think today, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a typical athlete for any of the 5 main wetsuit manufacturers. That each one of them makes a product to some extent in their product line that can cover 95% of the athletes that toe the line at a triathlon.
Gotcha.
That's my viewpoint.
I think, yes. And this is, again, I want to convey to you, because as we go through this show, you'll see this will come up numerous times where I may sit on one side and you're going to sit on the other. But this is the beauty of this subject, is it's not a cut and dried, okay, this is the way to go type of a scenario. And it has nothing to do with the quality, because as I know Orca as an ownership base, they're tremendously interested in serving the full community. And that's the part that you really have to come down to, because I have personally fit suits that a bodybuilder type, the guy that's been in fitness and now is going to try triathlon, I would have a tendency to steer away from Orca brands because it follows more that traditional, leaner athlete than, say, somebody that's 6 foot, 250 with a big chest and big shoulders. So, yes, no, indifferent.
I'm going to fall back on my previous statement that I think that there are products in the lines in all the 5 major brands and sizes inside those product lines that are going to cover those people. I really do think that there is, that there are the Chuck Liddells of the world that you're going to have a hard time. But I look at Heinz Ward, right? Heinz Ward, NFL football player. He's a beefy guy, not really tall for a ball player, so you might put him on the shorter line. But he's pretty stacked, wouldn't you say? I mean, he's got some guns, he's got some shoulders, and so he would be one of those, like I would say, what you're referring to as a non-traditional athlete, and he's been placed into the tier freak of nature, and so that is probably the most expensive wetsuit on the market. And you would think, since it's the most expensive, it probably has the least amount of size options or fitting options because of the exclusivity of the price. Is kind of put it out of the ballpark of your traditional or beginner or average or non-traditional athlete. And I would show that the sizes that they have there even make him comfortable, and that he's been fitted and has been using that. So I'm going to say that the technology and the manufacturers that are in the game and have survived the storm and have survived the fad, that they have the capability of putting the right suit in the right size on the right person 95% of the time.
Okay. All right, so now let's go off to the particular brands, the particular models underneath the Orca brand. They have the 3.8. That's more their open water, longer distance. And then they have their Alpha, the Sonar, and the Keep. And we'll just, they also have one other here. I'm just looking at making sure. Yes, they actually have the S4 as well. So what is your familiarity with the different brands, and how does the technology fit in, or do we need to really get down to read every detail of the marketing hype, if you will? Sorry, I didn't mean to put that way, but where do you need to go? How far down into each one of these brands, and where do you go from here?
Well, I think you start off, and again, let's look at the price point of each one, right? So let's look at the highest end one for the Orca brand, which is the Alpha Male. And first of all, you just got to love the names of them, right? You know, love the fact that they put that out there, and I love when they put their highest end wetsuit out there. They have like the most graphics and the most flashy looking thing. So, if you look at that Alpha Male wetsuit, you're looking at it's a suggested retail price is $699. It's they got it on Chris McCormick, they got it on a bunch of different Ironman and ITU athletes such as Oscar Gomez that are doing very well. And I think the product itself, they're just basically stepping up and putting, I think, better cuts and better streamlines into this. So the one place that I've seen a lot of the change, not just the shoulders and the joint area, but is how they're interchanging the thickness of neoprene throughout the body. So if you look at the body itself and you look at the body of the wetsuit, you're noticing that the neoprene is not always the same in each place. So they're looking in the shoulders and in the upper chest area and the neck. You're seeing that the neoprene is very thick. It actually goes from 1 millimeter to 5 millimeter and throughout the wetsuit, and 5 millimeter is the thickest that you can actually have it for to have it be legal in both triathlon and swimming, open water swimming. So you're seeing it in different areas. Now the other place that you look is if you go and you look on these wetsuits, the inside forearms of these wetsuits have become very aggressive over the last couple of years, and you're seeing like on the Orca and that on the Alpha Male that inside almost looks like the tread of a snow tire. Now I think if you're going to have anything that's going to go changing in the next couple of years, it's going to be the fact that they're probably going to limit the amount of traction that they're going to allow in those inside arms. But because they've already made the wetsuits manufacturers have already tried to push the envelope with neoprene thickness. So I would say that they're probably going to, next thing is going to come down is they're going to say, well, we're not going to be able to put anything on the inside of those arms. So, but for now, I think it's a great advantage for swimmers and for the for the manufacturing community. So I think that's a great thing. Now, if you look down their line again, you see now the Equip is probably the most used or probably the most purchased by, I would say, the general population of triathletes, and the reason for that is, again, price point. But you see a lot of the same things that are identical with the with the alpha male. But if you look very closely at it, you can see that the cut is different. So you notice how the cut on the chest and how the crotch is different, how the seaming is different, and how the placement of the different thicknesses of neoprene is. This is more underneath the armpits. You can see that it's a little bit thinner. The forearms don't have the aggressive forearm panels. But again, it's just a little bit of how the water's streaming there. So, in your average triathlete, are they going to see much difference in some of the stitching here? No, not at all. But this is where range of motion is going to come into play. And so, if you have somebody who's a bigger individual, and the one suit allows more range of motion, like if they have to go to the alpha male because the range of motion is the only thing that allows them to get to that point, then I think, yeah, there you go. But I think that it's going to definitely come down to getting in the suit, getting the body in the suit, and trying to swim around. Because if you look at the other wetsuits we have, so again, the 3.8 Enduro male, that's a whole different level of thicknesses in the buoyancy there, and how it's put together. And so that might not be applicable. You can see that there are big buoyancy pads that are in the pelvis and on the front of the more where the hip joints are, that create different levels of buoyancy. But again, if you look at the general construction of it, they don't have the seams in the same positions as they have in that middle equip line.
Yes, and see, on the seam question, I'll kind of give another angle on it. Is that when they actually make the suits, the higher end suits are made on a different pattern, because the more seams you have, the less flexible the neoprene becomes. So what they end up doing is they end up putting the higher end suits on a certain pattern, and they cut the suit to be the fewest amount of seams. Well, then this creates an extra amount of material. Well, out of that extra material is what they create the lower end suits, which causes the streamline, or which causes the seams, which makes it a little bit less flexible in that sense. But then they're able to change the pattern to match other people, like you're saying. So what ends up happening is if you look at the suits, the higher end suits will always have fewer seams because they're trying to make it the absolute most flexible possible. Now, this is one thing that I think, and it may be a little bit old, but I don't think so. But what is your thoughts? Because over the last 2-3 years, they started to create more of these kind of this waffle or this kind of a dual layer type, like almost like the Batman suit. That's what the original 2XU suit looked like. You put it on, you look like Batman. Mm-hmm. With the placing of the different pieces into that kind of like that dual layer type of scenario. What are your thoughts on it? Do you think it actually does help?
Well, I think it does help. I mean, the fact that they're using different layers of neoprene on different parts of the body are addressing the specific range of motion issues. So if you look at places that don't need to have buoyancy but need to have range of motion, you're going to want a thinner, more flexible piece of neoprene versus a heavy, thick piece of neoprene. That's the shoulders, the crotch. Those are very specific locations that you're going to need that in there. And I think that the fact that they're placing those in those locations is definitely addressing those specific needs. So I think it's great innovation. Yes.
All right, now let's kind of go into some specific questions, kind of as I think about them, because like I say, when you come up. Now, say we have a taller person that has a very long torso, long arms, and shorter legs. He gets the suit on, finds out that it fits great. What? Oh, sorry. Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, sorry. Anyways, he fits the suit for his length up top, but now these legs are almost like they're like baseball pants because they're down and they're gapping at the bottom. What solution would you have for somebody like that, where they have those baseball leggings, but it fits great on the top because of the torso length issue?
Well, I mean, it's an easy one to answer, I think, is that you cut off the bottom. So you just take a scissors to the bottom of the legs and take that off. Now, the things that you need to address in that scenario is higher sealing up the seams, because you're going to be modifying where those seam ends are. So using a little seam cement, which is repair cement, which is whoever sold you the wetsuit should have all that available. Otherwise, you can go online. Essentially, just a rubber cement. You can use some thin canvas as a backer, almost like a Band-Aid, or a mesh when you're doing fiberglass repair. That will help also to hold that together. But you cut it up. Just cut it up so it fits. And that's also utilized a lot of times in people who are trying to speed up transition. So instead of having the need to have the wetsuit go down to the bottom of your feet, why not cut it up, make that hole bigger, and allow your foot to come out? People are very, very wary, as they should be, for to take a brand new uniform or a suit that's $700. So I don't want to cut it. Well, let's modify it so it's work best, because that little bit of neoprene on the bottom is not going to help you at all. It's only going to limit you. And I think most manufacturers would also recommend that. As far as if it's baggy on the bottom, it doesn't really matter. It's not going to do anything to hamper the flow. I mean, it's different. I'd rather have it being baggy in the back, like the end of a windsock, versus the front of a windsock. It's like where your neck is. If that's baggy, that's going to be grabbing water. If you have something at the end, that's not going to be really a problem, and it won't be that much of an issue. And if need be, if really need comes to the forefront, you can always send it back to the manufacturer, and they can make some specialized modifications. I've seen zippers actually added to the back of the calf sleeves, or the back of the calves of a wetsuit, to allow the wetsuit to be open more.
Done. And that's the big thing that I think is important, is that you really need to talk to the manufacturer before you do something like that, because some will void the warranty and some will actually go the extra mile and help you out, because the worst thing in the world to do would be to cut the bottom and then have something like the zipper pop out, and then you want to go ahead and return it. Well, it's funny because they'll play these stupid games where, you modified the suit, we can't help you out, and you're like, okay, just as long as you get that squared away. Because there are some that I've worked with that have actually agreed that cutting as long as you only go up to a certain amount of the tape underneath and all that kind of stuff. So let's go back to another one. Orca has a cupped neck versus a crew neck. What are your thoughts related to a cupped neck or a crew neck wetsuit, or related to Orca?
Well, the cup neck is obviously designed to lower the friction factor. Friction is where the wet, as you're breathing to the side, you start to see the need for your neck to move, and without some sort of proper lubricant, for lack of a better term, you're gonna create chafing, and that's where the term wetsuit hickey comes from. So if you see people that are you see triathletes, there's a couple of things that you can mark a triathlete with just by standing in the locker room. Number one is the wetsuit hickey around their neck. Number two is the triathlete tramp stamp, which is the little area in the small of the back where when they're riding their bike and they're wearing their tri-shirt and their tri-shorts, that separates, and they always get sunburn there. It looks like a little half moon on their back. So you look for the triathlete tramp stamp and the wetsuit hickey, and that's where it's going to come from. The cup neck, having it below, is just essentially looking to keep the friction in the neck at a minimum, and also keeping the seal there. So I'm a fan.
Yes, but just do be aware that it does change the feel. And if you, I've seen some people put on a wetsuit and it fits fine overall, but that neck, it almost essentially like a chokehold. And I'm not saying the cup neck or anything like that is doing that, but you really have to make sure, because it's really important to get that neck piece proper. And like Kris has mentioned, is that if you don't have it, first of all, you're going to be taking on water, and two, it's going to get worse as the race goes on, and you say, it's no big deal, no big deal. It's important that you take care of these things before you get into the race, most part. But don't ever just go in thinking, I've had people put on suits that, it's okay, even though it looks like my head's going to turn purple, and, it's okay, I'll get out there and be fine. No, get it fixed before you show up for the race, because it's that important. All right, so anything else that we could talk about Orca? Because they do have, the Sonar, and some other brands in between. What are your thoughts related to, we talked about the top end, we talked about the bottom end. What is the Sonar good for?
Well, I think that it just kind of covers the rest of the bases, right? I think that's where it's there. It's just another fit in the line, just like how tennis shoes have, just like, what's the difference? It's like kind of jumping from us talking about what's the 700 series of a BMW and then going down to the 300 series of a BMW and saying, well, what about that 500 series? Well, I think it's the middle ground, right? It just kind of covers the gap between the two. So I think, in the limited time that we have to talk about the topic, I think the other thing that I always see people having questions about, and if you're looking at their on the website of these guys that for Orca they have here are two products that are neoprene products but are not wetsuits, and that's the neoprene swim cap and the swim booties. So just a quick addressment on the necessity and the practicality of either of these two products. Neoprene swim cap, if you're in a very cold water atmosphere, it's very applicable. It has a lot of different uses, keeps the heat out because we lose heat through the top of our head. We're trying to retain the heat there. You can put a swim cap over the top of it. Very applicable. Works great. I think it should be in the swim bag of all the serious triathletes who are going to swim in a cold weather, early season or late season water. It's very necessary. Swim socks, not worth their weight in anything because we don't lose heat out the bottom of our feet, right? So when we're swimming, it's one of our extremities, and essentially all it's doing is it's there for our personal protection. So if you don't like walking in weeds, if you don't like to touch the bottom of the lake or the bottom of the river or the bottom of the pool, then get them. If you're looking to put swim socks on to keep your feet warm, then you're fooling yourself because just by putting socks on does not keep your feet warm. The action of kicking and the moving of the blood around the body so that it keeps up your core body temperature. That's the necessity angle right there. I swam in a very cold lake, Tempe Town Lake at Ironman, Arizona in 2010. I saw a number of people that said, it was a swim sock legal. They said, I'm going to do that. And all they ended up doing was having a secondary swim because it caused issues in transition. It caused issues with how am I swimming because it changes your kick a little bit. It creates a little extra drag in some instances. I think it can affect the flexibility of the ankle in some instances. I do not believe that they have a practical application in triathlon that I can see as a coach or as an athlete and that I would recommend as a coach and as an athlete. They have great application in scuba diving, windsurfing, kite surfing, things like that, snorkeling, but not in triathlon.
See, and this is interesting because I'll tell you a cool story is the way triathlon works is Coeur d'Alene one year, probably 2009 or something like that, 2 weeks before the race called it and said, okay, we're going to change the guidelines. The water is really cold, so you can now have socks, gloves, and the swim cap and everything. And all of a sudden we got about 15 orders for next day air, swim cap and swim socks. And we were like, what in the world just happened? We didn't know about the announcement, but it really is something that if you're to have in your bag previous to that, because people were just, all of a sudden they were out of stock. It's like an accessory that's there until 17 people want it and there's only 4. You got to make sure you have those things early because it like I say, we were having to ultimately tell people that you have to take either a wrong size or you don't get any. And even at that time, the vendor of choice, for us anyways, was out of stock as well. So it really does cause problems. All right, that's Orca. I know that there's a lot of, we could go for, I think in the end, hopefully we've challenged your thoughts to say, you know what, put some science to this, but it is an art form. Everybody has their certain way of looking at it. Orca has a fantastic website. I think what's great about it is they have that little Zoom piece on there. And they've always been really cool about putting good information up as well. Chris McCormick has a great video, at least he used to. I don't know, I haven't checked within the last couple months, but how to put on a wetsuit. What he puts, little bags over, all the little cool little tricks that he does. And it's a great 10, 15-minute video about how to put on a wetsuit. So I think they've always been on the leading edge of trying to get the information out to people. You know what I mean? And not just saying, okay, if you want one, you'll be cool to buy the most expensive. No, they're about educating the beginner as well. So with that, we're going to go to a quick break, and we will come back and move up to Blue 70. I shouldn't say move up, move over. I should probably have a better way to put it. So talk to you in about a minute. Five Star Basketball, the leader in basketball instruction and camps. Endorsed by Michael Jordan, Dick Vitale, and Hubie Brown, and where the teaching never stops. 5-Star Basketball Minnesota will be hosting a one-day instructional camp on May 18th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. and will be hosted by 5-Star, the McCarthy Project, and Grassroots Hoops. For more information on the camp, visit themccarthyproject.com/5-star. XL Athlete is the leading provider of online strength and conditioning and speed development camps. For more information on their training programs and speed development camps, visit xlathlete.com. Alrighty, we are back. This is Stephen McCarthy from the McCarthy Project and Kris Swarthout as well. And we are talking triathlon wetsuits at a brand level. You know, and I think that's important to, once you come to the realization that you obviously need a wetsuit, the next decision becomes you talk to a couple of buddies of yours or some friends, and they give you some great information, and now what are you going to do with it? Kris made a great point to stop at your local shop and try them on. I think that's the most important piece as well. So we're going to move over to Blue 70 now, which at one point is used to be sponsored or used called the Ironman wetsuit. They used to have that brand, or not that brand, that particular suit. They then allowed those rights to go off to other brands, and they renamed themselves the Blue 70 suit. I think it's also one of the top brands as far as technology is concerned. The Helix suit has always been in that game. What are your general thoughts about Blue 70?
Well, once again, I'd referred to, my top 5 brands that I would have an athlete choose from, and this is definitely one of the top 5 brands. Blue 70, I think, was, if memory serves correctly, they were the front runner in the speed suits, the minimal buoyancy speed suits that were first used in Ironman Hawaii, to give the pro athletes a little bit more advantage than just skin, because what they're looking for, and what's always a wonderful thing in the technology, is that the exterior skin on these wetsuits is actually smoother than shaved human skin, and and actually moves through the water faster. So that's what if memory serves, they were the groundbreaker in that technology. Since that technology has modified and changed a little bit, and what they allow, it has to be now zero buoyancy versus just minimal buoyancy, which the original suits had minimal buoyancy. So I love when a product line changes the game, and that really has changed the game now. So you see speed suits used a lot, almost exclusively in long course Ironman races. But again, just the product line that they come out with, I think is again just covers the gambit of all this needs that every athlete would have to have. I think again, if you look at some of the things we talked about with Orca, with the cuts, everything from the Helix down to the Sprint, you're seeing the same things. You're seeing the cut of the Neoprene is in the right places. The thickness is in the right places. The range of motion and flexibility is in the right places again. And as you get down lower in the price point, you're going to see that change, just like with the other ones. So again, this would be just another suit that I would say try on, see how it fits, see if you have a local manufacturer or local distributor that has the capability of allowing you to try it and move forward. And so that's what makes me, an advocate of this brand as something to be vetted out in an athlete's bag of tricks.
What is your feelings about the reverse zipper?
Never used the reverse zipper. It's just different technology. I don't think it's any better or any worse, to be honest with you. I've never seen. It looks more like a tail to me. I think it sets them apart in the brand, but it's not the wetsuit that I personally use. Therefore, I've never actually used that style, but it's unique. It's different. It's very it'd be like saying, well, what do you think about the fact that the new Quintana Roo bike doesn't have a left side seat stay, and it's only a right side seat stay, or that the bottom bracket is offset. I think it's a unique characteristic of the product. Whether it changes the functionality of it one way or the other, in my book, I don't see it being a game changer.
Yes, and it's interesting because a little bit of an indication would be that I think of the major brands, there might be, I think TYR might have one that I just trying to remember back over the years, but there are only these guys with the reverse zipper, and maybe that's a patent issue or something like that. I do not know, but they are the only major brand that has consistently marketed themselves with the reverse zipper. Now, the one other piece, too, is that they have the crew neck version on more of their suits rather than the cup neck. Now, do you see that being different for one athlete versus another?
No, it's all in the personal fit and use of somebody if they don't have an issue with it. And I wear a crew neck, and it's essentially just about making sure that you have proper lubrication and that you're taking the right steps to keep that taken care of. Is it something that somebody should say, oh, well, that's a crew neck, so I'm going to stay away from it, or that's a cup neck, I'm going to stay away from it? I don't think that's the case. It's just another piece of the puzzle that people want to take into account when they're fitting these things.
Now let's actually, now that we did not hit it yet, but what are the best applications of the long john, sleeveless, whatever name you want to put on it, as far as the sleeveless wetsuit? What are in your mind the best applications of a sleeveless wetsuit?
When somebody's looking for price point,
okay.
I think that's the only thing. I think the if the range of motion is your issue, then the possibility for you to get a better range of motion suit is there. It's just going to cost you more. If you don't want to pay to get that range of motion, well, then you have a less expensive suit with no sleeves that eliminates the range of motion question entirely. So my first suit that I ever had was a John. I used it and for many years, and I would say if you're going to be using a John suit, that the next step that I would have is I would have sleeves that would go along with it. You can get their exteriors, like they call them speed sleeves. A couple different companies have those out there, and so you can see those as a possibility for an upgrade. I don't think Blue 70 sells them. I know Quintana Roo has them, but they're definitely a good accessory. Yes.
Now I would add two other situations that I think that I would say are good scenarios. Is one, if you feel claustrophobic in a suit and just having your arms free frees you from that, that seems to have been and you kind of have to take the good with the bad, realizing that you're not going to have the coverage. But the idea of being free or feeling that of being free is a big benefit. And two, it seems as though sometimes like some college swimmers or some very high level swimmers like to feel the water more than have that piece intermixed. And so having their arms exposed gives them that sensation that they're actually feeling the water. Again, you take the good with the bad in that you don't get the coverage because you're now on bare skin, or if it's a warm or a cold type thing, well, now obviously your arm is going to be cold because they're exposed. But again, there's some little pieces that if you're in that little extreme case where, hey, I'm a little claustrophobic and the idea of having full coverage drives me nuts, this is an option as well. You have that little freedom piece. So,
it's there, but I think the other thing you have to look at is when you take the sleeves off, you're now creating two large holes that have the potential to gap and grab water again. So versus just the thin, small, tight hole that is around your wrist, you now have to say, okay, I'm acknowledging that I'm going to have these big, large gaps around my arms that could potentially grab water if the suit is not properly fit, or if I make some sort of motion, or if it gets stretched out. That's there. It's another high impact chafing point, because now that you have the end of the neoprene right in your arms in a place that's moving, that's another place you have a high potential for chafing versus if you don't have, or versus if you have a full sleeve on. And for those of you that have chafed there, you understand exactly what I'm saying. The other thing is that with the suit, even that the full suit is faster, is proven to be faster in the water than a John suit because of the extra traction that's on the forearm and also the smooth coverage between the forearm and the body, and then it becomes more hydrodynamic. And for those people that say that I'm feeling claustrophobic and the arms free me up, I would have them reassess where they're feeling that draw from, because the majority of claustrophobia is related to restricted breathing. And so that I'd be challenging them to say, is it really the arms, or is it that you got a suit on that's giving you more room in the chest? And if that is honestly the case, then let's look for a suit that has more room in the chest and has full arms, because just by constricting your arms, it's no different than wearing like a tight-fitting shirt, because the chest and not your ability not to breathe and the limitation of the movement of the rib cage is and the manipulation of the diaphragm is going to have a higher level impact on a person's either anxiety or if they start to hyperventilate. That's where that's going to be impacting, not so much in the arms, because your arms don't breathe.
Correct. All right, so now let's move off to another piece that on the, not necessarily in the Orca brand, I didn't see it too much, and I'll go back and review that if it's not, but in the Blue 70 line, they have the top-end Helix line, which is got the SCS coating, the shiny finish. And then in their lower Sprint brands, they have the brushed in the armpit. So it really is not, it's like neoprene that you would normally think. It's got that little kind of more that grippy feeling. And as I understand where that comes from is essentially what happens when they use the SCS coating is that they basically take the neoprene, they cut the middle out, then they put the two pieces back together. That becomes the 5 mil, 4 mil. But when they have all this extra material, they use it in these lower-end suits. Now, have you seen any performance differences in the brushed or the non-SCS coated? And I guess I already know the answer, but I'm going to throw it out to you anyways.
That's a ground ball. Hey, the coating is what separates a triathlon wetsuit from a regular scuba diving wetsuit. That and the sizing. The fact that the water doesn't move as quickly and as smoothly over it, and it creates more drag than the SCS covering does. That's exactly the case. So you use something that has less technology, is a lower end in the speed and the serviceability. I think that's why it's a cheaper product. So it's all it comes back again full circle. You're getting what you're paying for.
Yep. And I think that's an accurate piece, because if you look at the Sprint suit, and I'm just looking on the Blue 70 site, we're talking $199 versus $600. And they're, we had talked earlier about the panel placement, how the panels are created, and again, what they're trying to do with the Sprint is they're trying to make it the most inexpensive possible, and use these extra parts that they would normally just be throwing away, again, to maximize their profit, which is fine. But again, you have to realize that there is a performance difference between that real entry level to even the mid-range, and then for sure to the top end.
Yes.
I'm glad you agree. It would really be difficult if you didn't agree with me.
Or awkward.
Exactly. And we were talking to people all over the world, and then they would be mad at me because I would have to disagree with you. So. All right. Anything else related to the Blue 70 brand? I know they have a lot more of those accessories that you were talking about earlier with the socks. And have you any particular thoughts on the Blue 70 accessories? Because they've got gloves with the little webs. Is that legal? Which I already know. But what are your thoughts on the gloves? And we already know your thoughts on the socks. But is Blue 70 have an advantage?
No, I was speaking to the general product of the neoprene cap and the socks. I don't think they have any place in racing, maybe training. If you're, like I said, if you need to feel more comfortable. The gloves are not legal. That's a training glove. It's more like essentially just like a hand paddle, and they're used in that manner.
Done. All right, so we're going to go off to a quick commercial break. We'll come back, and we're going to move over to. Let's actually move over to 2XU and Sports Multiplied. 5-Star Basketball, the leader in basketball instruction and camps. Endorsed by Michael Jordan, Dick Vitale, and Hubie Brown, and where the teaching never stops. 5-Star Basketball Minnesota will be hosting a one-day instructional camp on May 18th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. and will be hosted by 5-Star, the McCarthy Project, and Grassroots Hoops. For more information on the camp, visit themccarthyproject.com/5-star. XL Athlete is the leading provider of online strength and conditioning and speed development camps. For more information on their training programs and speed development camps, visit xlathlete.com. Alrighty, we are back. This is Stephen McCarthy and Kris Swarthout of the McCarthy Project. We are talking triathlon wetsuits and brand-specific fit, technology, price, old. What is it? Would be a wives' tale? Was that right?
A wives' tale, yes.
Yes, where you're told something that sounds really scientific, but really has no place in the science world. Sometimes, if science is not working for you, the art does take over. And I think we hit one of those subjects earlier where the science says that claustrophobia comes from here. But if it makes you feel better, well, then I'm not going to argue with you, to a certain extent. If you feel like you're Superman in a particular suit and it fits like crap, you know what? Go off and be Superman. You know what I mean? That it does come to a point where I have had numerous arguments. I should say arguments, but when we were fitting people in the store, I would define this particular suit and this particular brand as best for you, but they were interested in this particular suit, and they could not be swayed with any sort of science, and you make the quality judgment that if you feel like it fits $1 million and you perform at your best, who's to say that I'm wrong or right? If that way, I mean, I know it's not a science, but there does come a point of art. Would you agree or disagree?
I would agree that you don't argue with the customer. They're the one that paying you, right?
Yes.
I mean, so I have the luxury as a coach on the outside to tell people, kind of like Cher did to Nicolas Cage in the movie Moonstruck, which you have no idea what I'm referring to now, where you slap him in the face and you say, "Snap out of it."
Yes.
Listen to what the logic says. I get the fact that you don't like your arms there and you want to show the gun, show off, and you got full tat sleeves. But if you're going to buy something, do it smart. That makes all the sense in the world. Because as a coach, you're not in the position of saying you have a choice of just following your love of showing off your arms. We're going to talk about performance and what enhances that performance. As a retailer, you have to realize that their role is different. They're not going to argue with you, and they're not going to tell you anything different. They're going to gently, hopefully, tell you what's right and wrong. But in the end, it's a love-hate relationship. You got to realize, be careful, on the sense of the retailer, but also go in with an open mind too. Don't go in closed from that standpoint. I think a good customer is going to appreciate when a salesperson or a business owner gives you a justified, strong retort, though. I think that it's important that just because you're selling something, you don't sell it just because somebody says, "Hey, this is exactly what I want." I think there's a responsibility as a salesperson or a business owner to say, "You know what? I know you believe this, but give me 30 seconds to try and tell you why you're wrong." And there's a way to say that, and there's a way not to say that. You can go into it and go, "Let me tell you, you are just an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about," right? And this is how I was talked into a couple of things at a great local retailer here in the Minneapolis area, Gear West. And it's like I've had great people talk to me there. And and when you go to a place that has a good speaking base from an expertise background, you hold them to be the experts in that product or that style, and you always go back there, and you tend to trust them on other things, and I think that's what as a retail professional, I think that might be maybe your Hippocratic oath, if you were to say, as the doctors have, is that you want to educate the consumer. You want to tell them why the product they're buying is better. It's almost like when I go to Home Depot, I want to know why one paint is better than other. Why are you telling me to buy this paint? And if you tell me, I may say that I may have gone in with the fact that Glidden was the best brand ever. But if you're telling me that Bear is, and you're giving me the six different reasons why it is and why I should buy this, well, you know what? Then it's my job to listen and to hear that out. But if I never hear that explanation from the get-go, and this is where wetsuits come in, if somebody's not telling you why one is better than the other, or why you should, or why they're strongly recommending this one to you, and why somebody can actually back that up with X, Y, and Z factors, then I don't think that the retailer is holding up their end of the bargain.
Yes, both sides. All right, so now we're off to Sports Multiplied and 2XU, which is the same thing. This is a relatively new player in the world of wetsuits, but has really stormed. It's kind of funny because I actually knew a person that was going to be involved in the initial launch of the product into the United States. And the person actually said no because they didn't think that 2XU was going to be able to pull it off. And what they meant by pull it off was they have sourced the world for the best products or the best fabric, the best materials, and then they were going to bring it all together, and then they were going to make it, and then they were going to ship it out. Well, logistically, they didn't think that would be possible because of numbers and volume and where it had to go and all that kind of stuff. But they have pulled it off, and they have probably one of the most expansive lines of product, ranging from like Blue 70, which is very, very specific, very tight. Orca, in the world, not quite as tight, but in the United States, very tight. 2XU has much more of a expanded, into run, into tri-suits, obviously, and all this other kind of stuff. So they really have attempted to kind of be this one-stop shop almost. Now, what are your thoughts related to technology if you're a one-stop shop like 2XU, or you're more like the really tight line like the Blue 70? Do you think there's an advantage or disadvantage by being in that position?
To being a one-stop shop?
No, to being we only do wetsuits, we are wetsuits, Blue 70. Or we are accessories. 2XU, hey, we got the best wetsuits ever, and we've got the best compression, and we've got the best run, and we've got the best tri-suits. See what I'm saying?
Gotcha. I think that it all comes down to the individual products. There's nothing wrong with having a very robust product line, as long as the products you have are high end. Unless you're trying to be, now no disrespect to Kmart, but unless you're trying to be the Kmart of clothing, and you're just trying to put a bunch of stuff out there, you have to look at each individual product and make sure each one's sharp. And that's like any other business. You can have a lot of different products that you push out to the public, to the consumer-facing products that you have offered, but if you're not making all of them be sharp and you're not spot on with each one of those, then I think you're going to fail across the board holistically. Now, if you look at 2XU, they are a relatively newcomer into the game, and I've got a couple of their products that I've utilized and that I've been given at different points in times. But you can see that they are. If we're looking physically at the product here, and I'm looking at the Project X, because I'm always comparing the highest level of technology in each one of these. The difference that you're seeing in the Project X here is you're seeing channeling, number one, used versus some of the other ones have not used. Channeling is a depression in the product. You're also seeing a raised level of the neoprene panels in very specific areas. You're seeing something that's consistent with the other ones, where there's a lack of seams and everything's very consistent in the front area and in the thinner product in the shoulder area. You're seeing a little more of a cup neck again as a theme or a trend. The forearms again, an aggressively modeled forearm, where we see the exposed, non-slippery neoprene, and we see this traction. And that's because when you're pulling through the water and you're in the third aspect of the swim stroke, which comes directly after the catch, which is the pull, and you're using your forearm to grab water, you want water not to slip away from there, but you want to actually use it like a paddle, and you want it to grip, so that's why those are there. The thing that you're seeing here for the first time is you're seeing dimpling. Now, dimpling is a new technology that we've seen in wetsuits, but where did it start out? Start out in golf balls. Where did it move to after that? Moved into disc wheels, and you saw that with a couple of different wheel manufacturers that started to use dimpling to modify airflow or modify, now in this case, water flow across a fixed object. I like the difference in the textures. I like the difference in the modeling of the product here. So that tells me that yes, 2XU or 2XU has gone out and said, okay, our wetsuits are going to be top of the line. They're going to be top technology. We're going to offer really great, groundbreaking, market reliable products here, and that makes me say that they have the ability to do that. Now, have they done that with all of their products across the line? I can speak to their compression tights, because I have a pair of those, and I think they're pretty neat. I don't know why my butt needs to be compressed and not just my calves, but I have a pair of those. So I would say that they're definitely have a good product there. So bottom line, I don't see a problem with it as long as the end product is always high quality.
Yes, because they were. The Project X suit was the first suit that looked like Batman. You know what I mean? And I was lucky enough to carry it the first year, and almost passed out when I had to get, even at wholesale, I spent $8,000 for 10 suits or something like that. It was kind of funny because I was like, man, I could eat a lot of supper with that suit. But it was a fun time because it really did. Now, this is one thing, because I think the channeling is something that there is, not only the dimpling, the channeling, but do you actually feel the channels and the dimpling are an advantage, again, in the world?
Well, it's like is it my personal belief, or do they have any sort of scientific, research-based, factual numbers that back that up? My gut instinct would say that they probably do, and they have to. Now, the channeling is just like they would have channeling on a boat hull, or you would have on anything else like that goes through the water. That I would say is yes. And if you follow the same theology that goes along with the dimpling on a golf ball travels farther through the air where it's dimpled versus whether it's flat, and that a disc wheel travels faster through the air that's dimpled versus being flat and smooth, then I would say yes, that it's not always just the straight arrow that goes fastest. If you look at some of the bulging that has been incorporated into the just below the rim of wheels, like wheels that Head has offered, and if you look at the rims on the disc wheels of a Head disc, you'll see that there's a different continuity there and a different texture, and it's not just flat. So I would say that if I went with my logical side of my brain, that these would make the suits faster. Ultimately, the propeller or the engine has to be the individual. So you could have a terrible swimmer. Is it going to make a terrible swimmer Michael Phelps? No. Is it going to make a terrible swimmer a little bit faster than if they were swimming in a less wetsuit? Probably. But I don't have the scientific facts to base that up. I just have scientific reasoning.
Yes. All right. So let's talk about this, because I think we're finding two veins of thought. Ultimately, there's marketing and marketing hype, and then there's truth, essentially from a scientific standpoint. But there's also, can you skin the cat more than one way and still succeed? If you will. There's more than one. The old adage, there's more than one way to skin a cat, if you will. But do you feel that this is what we're seeing? Is that there are different sets of technology that do make you go faster? Is one right or wrong, or is it just another way?
I think you're just looking at a product line trying to differentiate itself from another set of products. Yeah. You have to put yourself out there, and you could put the same wetsuit out that everybody else is doing. They're going out on a limb and saying, hey, we're going to put a different set of technology in here. We're going to try and market that technology to let people know why we believe it is better. If the concerned consumer could give a rat's butt about what they're doing and about that dimpling, then the consumer is going to be the end result is going to be the end of the line for that product. They're going to tell the producer that, okay, we're not going to buy it just because of that. We don't care about that. And so then they've not done a good job at selling that. And so then they would have to go back to the drawing board and say, well, why do we need to tell people why this is better? Or, you know what, maybe it's just not worth it. People don't care. Maybe they just don't care. They just want a wetsuit.
Exactly. Now, all right, so now we'll go down into the world, because I think, I'm going to come back to that because now I think about it, is that in the end, you really do have to take the marketing component to this and really take a look at it, because what I found is a lot of consumers really, really confused because they think they see the channeling on one, but it's not on the other, and they say, well, where's your channeling? It's almost like who gets position A in the consumer's mind wins, so to speak, because every technology is a little bit different. It looks different, although they have the paneling, and they were kind of what I remember anyways, is the first one that came out with the paneling and that Batman look. But, all right, so now we're down to the Project X, Velocity, Race, and the Active suits. What are your kind of general starting points to the brand? Do we kind of hold the same piece? What are the differences?
I'm holding the same line. I mean, Stephen, if you look at this product, that nothing is different in the fact that each one puts out I'm going to put it back to the BMW reference. Everybody puts out the 700 series or the 900 series. Everybody puts out the 500 series, the 300 series, and that's what it is. You're looking at price point reflecting technology. Straight up.
Done. Because there is the major, I think the visual on the 2XU line is a little bit different in the sense that the channeling does become less and less. So if you're big in the channeling, you're going to see that the lower end doesn't have it as much. And it really does come down to they've got the cup neck. Now, I do know that the designers of these wetsuits actually got their original start with Orca. So you'll see a lot of the same technology tied between these two suits in that the designers were ex-Orca employees. So that's why I think you see the cup neck and you see a lot of the same, kind of designs where others do not have those. So it is something that if you take a step back, you can start to see the very much a similar look, I guess, and feel from that standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Is there any? Pardon me?
No, I was agreeing with you.
Yep. All right. So anything else that you want to hit? Because I think as we get going through the brands a little bit, you'll start to see that there is some commonality in the whole world. Like you say, there's basically the brands, what price point do you want to be at? Now this is another question that comes out of it. If you're a better swimmer, does the technology help you, or is the technology a hindrance?
It helps, obviously. I mean, think about in the Olympics. You're the best swimmers in the world, and were they utilizing technology, or are they sticking with the little plain Jane jammers? They were utilizing every piece of technology possible to try and make them faster, and that was essentially putting different coatings on their body and over their body. I'd say the technology definitely is there. I'd say that it's buying speed is what you're doing. You're buying speed, and that's how that is extrapolated out and what's the end result of that change is going to be the swimmer. But it's very important for people to know that you can't just go out and say, okay, I want to buy the best wetsuit. It's going to make me a good swimmer. It's still technique, but are you going to swim better in a better wetsuit? Yeah, probably a little bit less restrictive. You might be a little bit better buoyancy for you. It's going to be a little better fit. But the wetsuit doesn't swim itself. The wetsuit allows the athlete to perform a little better because there's less restriction on it. Exactly. Now, the one thing we haven't talked about here, and I don't know if we're going to go into it, but I think the one is the only brand that we have not touched on is TYR so far. Yep. And
that's
and so if you look at what TYR has, it's a lot of the same things. It's a lot of the same things. They have those different series, but what they've come out with is they're testing the waters with, let's put out a $1,500 wetsuit, and are people willing to pay twice what most brands have or offer for something that they deem to be even more technologically advanced? And it's interesting that product has actually stuck for a couple of years, and it's saying this: will people wear that freak of nature? and that's an interesting thing to watch. And you're looking at the whole realm of wetsuit technology, and the question is, will you start to see the other brands follow suit and offer something that is so above and beyond that they will offer that? It's almost it's like everybody else is offering cars, and then you have Lamborghini, because that is the price point difference. It's twice the price of the highest end wetsuit that's out there. Does it make you twice as good? I don't know. Maybe not. But there are different technologies that have been invested in there, just like when we talked about with 2XU investing into dimples and investing into channeling. Are the consumers out there willing to pay for that dimpling and channeling to separate themselves away from other brands? Well, I think the fact that you're seeing something that's twice as expensive staying in the consumer price line and staying as a consumer supported product, that's yes. So I am very interested to watch this wetsuit industry to see how it reacts to that bold move that TYR made out there. And so TYR makes that bold move out in front, just like Blue 70 made the bold move of making the very thin speed suits, and everybody followed suit with that. Is everybody going to follow suit with this $1,500, $1,300 wetsuit as their main Cadillac option or Lamborghini option, as we've talked about?
Yes, because I remember when Project X came out and I carried them that first year. I mean, they were actually $899, and so they were. The big question was, will people buy it? And I'm telling you, from a standpoint of sales, it really did come down to the cost. The Velocity line sold a lot better. The biggest seller was the R3 line from that standpoint. And again, I think you got the combination of, you got the technology and then you didn't have the big price. And that became kind of hey, I'm willing to go so far on this. This is what I got, my budget is. And so I get the most technology for my budget. It's R3. But like I say, it is an interesting thing. So we're going to go to a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back with TYR, and then we're going to hit any other kind of miscellaneous, kind of like the Rocket. I mean, there's a lot of there's lots. I've been just exploded. There's Zoot. I mean, there's just tremendous amount of other brands that we haven't spoke about, and we'll just talk about what you see and kind of the brands that we haven't covered as far as this is concerned right now. So we're going to go to a quick commercial, and then we'll be talking about TYR and other brands. Five Star Basketball, the leader in basketball instruction and camps. Endorsed by Michael Jordan, Dick Vitale, and Hubie Brown, and where the teaching never stops. 5 Star Basketball Minnesota will be hosting a one-day instructional camp on May 18th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. and will be hosted by 5 Star, the McCarthy Project, and Grassroots Hoops. For more information on the camp, visit themccarthyproject.com/5-star. XL Athlete is the leading provider of online strength and conditioning and speed development camps. For more information on their training programs and speed development camps, visit xlathlete.com. Alrighty, we are back. This is the final segment. We'll be done probably about 15-20 minutes. I'm going to kind of change the direction a little bit in what I said right before the break, because there's one question that, again, like little questions that pop up. One of the pieces to the puzzle is that if you have a body type that is so extreme, like where I had one guy, he had so much problem, his legs were so long that and his torso was so short, when he actually rode his bike, his knees hit his handlebars, because his legs were so long, because his torso was so short, as far as get the custom bike fit exactly right. And he ended up having to wear knickers, essentially, because in order to fit the top, his legs only went down below his knees. This leads to the question of the custom suit world, the custom triathlon wetsuits. What are your thoughts? Is it worth the money?
No.
That's it?
No, it's not. I mean, there are so many. We've covered such a great number of products that have such a great number of sizes that if you need to go out and have something custom, maybe as like, in the extreme idea, I would say only if none of these fit you. I would say if you are a person of short stature who is, say, 4 feet or less, then and there is nothing out there, or if you are a young child where no products are made for young children, then yes. But there's no real reason that I have seen in any of the conversation we've had so far to say you should go out and get a custom one, unless you have money to burn and you want to say that you have a custom one. That's the only reason. You're not going to see any other benefit.
Done. All right, so let's come back to TYR. Again, TYR is been a great player in the swim world, and they've come on the scene relatively recently in the world of triathlon. But they have made a big push and a big splash. What are your general thoughts and on the world of TYR?
I'm going to come out now and just tell you that I'm incredibly biased towards this company.
Gotcha.
I've worked with TYR and have been supported and sponsored, and have had teams supported and sponsored by TYR for a long time, and I'm a huge advocate. All my athletes wear TYR. All my MJet kids wear TYR, and I personally swim in the Hurricane 5. So
okay.
I'm a big advocate of their products. I've learned a lot about wetsuits in general from them, to know what is what and why it's there. But I can tell you that the biggest thing that I see come out of the TYR line and that I really love is the fact that they're pushing the boundaries, just like I said with Blue 70. And I think the freak of nature is definitely that one. Now, the price point on this is now coming down. Now it's it was originally released at a $1,500 price point. It's now $1,200. Which is great. So it makes it a little bit more affordable towards other people. But if you look at their Hurricane 5 is it's $650. So the freak of nature is almost twice. It's a huge jump in the price point. So if you look at their other wetsuits, they're looking at a price point jump from say $290 to $460 to $650, and then now you jump to $1,200. That's a huge jump in pricing. So I love that they're out front. I enjoy all the products that they put out, and I have nothing bad to say about these guys, except for the fact that I hope that their endurance drinks taste pretty good, because I see that's a new product for them coming out now.
The thing that I think that is interesting about the TYR world is that they have access to the swim market as a whole. And so they do have a lot more resources than the traditional triathlon company, where we're trying to, as a triathlon company, trying to build this niche and make it bigger. They kind of come in as, hey, we're King Kong, and we want to make the best. And they have some resources to invest, whereas some other, companies, like when we talk about the others, don't have that as far as the resources to invest in new leading-edge technology or try to push the envelope. So I think there is a big benefit to them to have, $300 million. I don't even know what the size of the company is, but do you happen to know by, sales, billions, is it? Or would it be, in $100 million?
I think they're in the gazillions.
Fair enough. All right, so what makes the freak of nature so good? Because we've talked about it a couple times throughout the show, and so let's just talk specifically about the freak of nature. What have they pushed in your mind?
Well, it's not what they've pushed. It's how the product's made, and if you look at what are some of the things that we've talked about so far, in the other products that have shown why it's better. It's essentially it's the cut. It's the different layerings of the neoprene in the specific areas that have made them different, and it's all of that have set them apart. So you're paying for things like Yamamoto 40 cell neoprene, which is the highest level of neoprene. You're looking at the fact that it's got a 7-time stretch factor in an unbelievably advantageous range of motion. These things are not cheap, and so can they put them together in a suit that makes you look like Iron Man? Absolutely, you can.
but you're going to have to pay for them. And so the question has always been, will people pay for that? And, I don't know that's ever been answered until now. I love the fact that they put six-pack abs on all of their athletes. I mean, you look at this freak in nature, and you look like Iron Man. Okay, I mean, There is definitely something to be said with the people who have put this together. Have really highlighted where the panels are on the quads, on the calves, and they've decided that, okay, here's what we're going to do. So let's look at it from the bottom up. So if you look down at the calves, you're looking at an incredibly stretchy portion of neoprene that allows an athlete to get in and out of their wetsuit easier. When we look up into the quad region, again, you're getting just like how we saw in the 2xU. You're seeing that the quads have panels that are thicker, and they have dimpling. Same with on the abdominal area, the dimpling and support of the body in the quadricep area, and also in the abdominals and in the pectoral area. You're seeing those, which are very similar to what the 2xU was, but these are just at a different level. You're seeing that the forearms are again on an extremely grippy, aggressive modeling, which is helping to go through the water. And then again in the shoulders and in the neck, we're wrapping that up with the very flexible Yokomoto neoprene, which is I think it's just more expensive and more time consuming to put together, a little bit more delicate. But are people buying it? The answer is yes.
Have you found, because they are the first ones with the Yamamoto. I'm not even going to say it. The 40.
Yamamoto 40 cell neoprene.
Yes, that's the one. They're a leader in this area. How do you feel that changes? What is your understanding of the science?
Well, it's just like anything else. People think that all carbon fiber is the same when that's not necessarily the case. The weave, the thickness, the directional laying of carbon fiber makes a frame stiffer or more flexible or more shock absorbent than others. So just because you have a carbon fiber bike does not mean that all carbon fiber bikes are the same. All carbon fiber bikes are not created the same. There's a lot of different factors. Same thing goes into a wetsuit. Just because it's neoprene doesn't mean that it's a specific grade and that they're all the same. There are different grades, there are different levels, there are different ways and styles to lay the grain, to stitch them together, to adhese them together, that makes them more pliable, makes them more flexible, and also more buoyant.
Done. All right, so now let's move over to, let's just define them as other, because there are numerous brands, probably more than you and I can even rip off, that we haven't mentioned in the show. What are your thoughts in relationship to the other? Is it just a bunch of also-rans? Are they just late to the party? Or what is your general thought?
Well, there's, like you said, there's a million of them. There's Rocket Science. There's Xterra. I mean, USA Triathlon has their own wetsuits, for goodness sakes. I mean, there's a number of them out there, right? And Speedo even has their own. Profile Design has their own. You can go out and find a bunch of them. I think what you're seeing is like what we touched on earlier, where you have a company that puts out a product that is, I don't want to say necessarily an afterthought, but it may not have the technological advantages, designs for other people, and they're trying to lure them in with a lower price point. So you take you take an Xterra wetsuit, for instance, and why are people buying an Xterra wetsuit? Well, because they're so darn cheap. And so if you're looking to save money, it's like, oh man, should I get a freak of nature or should I buy this? And if you're paying strictly on price point, you're going to go for the lower one. So they're offering a very low price point object. You get what you pay for. That's how the old adage is, and we've talked about that along the way today. And so I think for that and all the other products out there, I think they're just another low-end product that's there if you should want one. Because, just like not all aero bars are created the same and not all, bottom brackets and crank arms are the same, it's the same with wetsuits. You can get a cheap one that'll get you through, or you can get the high end. So if you look at Shimano, you can get a Sun Tour crank and shifter, or you can get the DI too. And but you're getting what you pay for. One's sloppy and heavy, one's light and fast.
I don't think there's anything to add to that. I think you're right. I mean, so many becomes, well, me too, me too, me too, me too. And you really do have to find a company that is going to be a leader in the technology if you're going to spend the money. I mean, if budget becomes the prevailing factor, which sometimes it is, you're going to use it once, go get the $100 one and call it good. But if you're looking at it from a serious standpoint, I think always you get what you pay for is probably truer than a lot of other areas, but I think in particular in wetsuits it's true. So any last thoughts before we close up for today?
Just to have people be a concerned consumer and an educated consumer, just like everything else we talk about. Buy from a local representative. Buy from a local shop. Shop local. Support your local stores because they're the ones that are going to do the service for you. They're the ones that are going to answer the questions for you. They're the ones that are going to handle the returns for you. If you buy online from a catalog, it's not helping the local scene. So if you got a local tri shop that's trying to make an impact in your area, support them. Give them the first shot. I'm not saying that you need to pay 2 times the regular price, but me personally, I'm always willing to pay 10-15% more to support the local guy, and I think that's important that's an important line that needs to be said in the industry here.
Well, I think that especially, if we're talking goo packets or something like this, that's an extreme. But I mean, you're talking about a wetsuit that you need to make sure it fits properly. And then you're also talking about a service thing. I mean, there's so many pieces to a wetsuit, and it always seems to be kind of like the bike case that's always purchased last. You know what I mean? They got all their stuff, and then they show up 3 days before the race and say, I need a wetsuit because it's cold out, or something like that. And so I agree with you. If you're going to support them, give them the time and just don't beat them up on price. Give them a couple bucks for being there for you. It really was a frustrating thing because we would have people come in and try out. I didn't want to be a showroom, necessarily. Like, that's the big stink about Best Buy. Best Buy is the showroom for Amazon. Well, no. Here, if I'm going to spend my time and I'm going to give you the information, and I've just got to charge you a couple extra bucks, that information should be worthwhile. Alrighty. Thank you, Kris, for coming on today. Thank you for spending the time. I know that it's a busy season for you, and so I really do appreciate you taking the extra time to come on the show and talk about the wetsuit world today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on today again.
Done. All right. So thank you, everybody, for listening. We will be back again tomorrow with a shortened show from 4 to 5 Central with Stephanie Freeman and talking about the Boston Marathon. And then we're back on Wednesday. We have Leslie Patterson, 2-time Xterra national champion, that world champion. And she's going to be talking about, she's got some really cool training videos and some really cool projects that I think everybody will enjoy. And then she's going to talk about it. She has a very unique perspective. I think she's probably one of the few people that actually take the time to really understand that, life is fun. Even in the world of triathlon, when we talk for 2 hours about picking a wetsuit, that you just got to have fun with it sometimes. And I think she's a perfect person. If you ever want to see some really cool videos, she's got the Braveheart brick, and then she's also got, I forget the name of it, but it's up on our Facebook page about the Don't Be That Triathlete. That's the name of it, Don't Be That Triathlete. So with that, thank you all for listening. Hopefully the information was of high quality. Sorry, it was kind of hard-hitting, but it seems like sometimes whenever you talk about wetsuits, it could go for hours in the discussion of the opportunity, discussion of the different variables, and we just laid the groundwork. In the end, like Kris mentioned, research, and then once you go with it, run with it, and call it good. Have a great day. Signing off for the McCarthy Project. Talk to you tomorrow at 4. Five Star Basketball, the leader in basketball instruction and camps. Endorsed by Michael Jordan, Dick Vitale, and Hubie Brown, and where the teaching never stops. 5 Star Basketball Minnesota will be hosting a one-day instructional camp on May 18th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. and will be hosted by 5 Star, the McCarthy Project, and Grassroots Hoops. For more information on the camp, visit themccarthyproject.com/5-star. XL Athlete is the leading provider of online strength and conditioning and speed development camps. For more information on their training programs and speed development camps, visit xlathlete.com.